This seems to be the opposite of that. It seems to be so many instances, I think, where wokeness is the opposite of what I grew up as liberals. Liberalism was, let's give the women an equal shot. This is let's put a male in the swimming pool with the women. I don't get it.
It's crazy. And meanwhile, trans people who genuinely want to compete at athletics and swimming or whatever it may be, they're the ones who are suffering here. They need to be found a way to compete fairly and justly.
Piers Morgan and Bill Maher joined forces to challenge a woke guest, and the result was downright hilarious.
Social justice warriors who are fond of governing by hashtag like to say silence is violence. And we know that because it rhymes. The words victim and survivor have traveled a long way from their original usage. The Baby from the Nirvana album says he's a victim. He's suing Nirvana for lifelong damages. I never thought I'd have to say this to a baby, but...
The opening discussion sets the stage by contrasting traditional liberalism with modern wokeness. Bill Maher and Piers Morgan highlight how liberal ideals once championed equality and fairness, but have now, in their view, been replaced by ideological rigidity. Maher points out that liberalism aimed to give women equal opportunities, while wokeness sometimes produces contradictory outcomes, such as allowing biological males to compete in women's sports. This contradiction becomes a symbol of how progressive movements can sometimes undermine their own values. Their critique suggests that inclusion should not come at the cost of fairness. The conversation captures the tension between evolving social movements and foundational liberal principles. It's a reminder that compassion without balance can lead to confusion and backlash. The segment frames wokeness as a departure from logical liberal thought. It sets the tone for a heated but necessary cultural debate.
Should be
what do you disagree with, out of interest?
I think that it should be up to sporting bodies to make their decisions about who and how should compete.
What has she said that's actually wrong?
I think that what she has done is try to turn this. We talked about people, using things to kind of get likes and get clicks.
That's not what she's doing. I've got no truck for Brooke Gaines personally, but all I've seen her do is stand up for women's rights to fairness and equality.
Well,
she actually competed against Leah Thomas, and it was obviously unfair. Leah Thomas won one of the races in the NCAA championships by 50 seconds against a bunch of biological females who simply couldn't keep up. That cannot be right. It cannot.
Katie Porter enters the conversation defending sporting authorities' right to decide who competes, but Piers Morgan immediately challenges her reasoning. He cites swimmer Riley Gaines' experience competing against transgender athlete Leah Thomas as an example of how fairness has been compromised. Morgan's argument relies on biological evidence, acknowledging the undeniable physical advantages men have over women in strength and endurance. Porter's defense seems rooted in political correctness rather than scientific reasoning, and her argument quickly weakens under scrutiny. The exchange underscores the growing tension between ideology and biology. Morgan frames Gaines not as a provocateur, but as an advocate for fairness. The debate becomes a clash between moral relativism and empirical truth. Porter's attempt to reduce Gaines' activism to attention-seeking fails to convince either Maher or Morgan. The moment reveals how emotional narratives can crumble under logical questioning. It's one of the most defining exchanges in the discussion.
Our sporting bodies should be dealing with. And by the way, Riley is speaking up for herself, and that is her prerogative, and I respect her free speech.
I think she's speaking up for pretty much every female athlete in the world.
Wasn't that the point of Title IX? Title IX in the early 70s was something that was it was a major event in feminism, that we finally have this law that says at colleges, right, and I think high schools too, but definitely colleges, women's sports have to be given equal to men's sports, so that women aren't and this led to the WN.
Bill Maher steps in to anchor the discussion in historical context, referencing Title IX, the landmark legislation that gave women equal opportunities in sports. His point is both nostalgic and sharp, reminding viewers that decades of progress in women's athletics are being reversed. He argues that allowing biological males to compete in women's divisions nullifies the very purpose of Title IX. Maher's reasoning is clear. If fairness is lost, equality is meaningless. His argument resonates because it ties modern policy back to foundational feminist victories. By contrasting past progress with present confusion, he paints the issue as a betrayal of genuine equality. The audience can sense how emotionally charged yet rational his stance is. Maher's tone blends reason with frustration, exposing how well-intentioned activism can become self-defeating. This section transforms the conversation from opinion to moral principle. It's where ideology meets the hard wall of history.
But definitely colleges. Women's sports have to be given equal to men's sports so that women aren't and this led to the WNBA and lots of other stuff. This seems to be the opposite of that. It seems to be so many instances, I think, where wokeness is the opposite of what I grew up as liberals.
Trans people who genuinely want to compete at athletics and swimming or whatever it may be, they're the ones who are suffering here. They need to be found a way to compete fairly and just.
Piers Morgan proposes a practical solution: create a separate category for transgender athletes. His stance is not exclusionary, but based on fairness and respect for all. By doing so, competition remains equal and no group is disadvantaged. He argues that forcing biological women to compete against trans women undermines trust in the integrity of sports. Morgan emphasizes that sports are built on fairness, not forced inclusivity or engineered outcomes. His argument appeals to common sense, offering a middle ground between compassion and competition. The idea reflects a growing public sentiment that inclusion should not erase distinctions that matter. It's a rational path that protects everyone's dignity without fueling division. Maher agrees, underscoring that fairness, not fear, should guide decisions. The segment ends on a note of realism rather than ideology. It's a refreshing example of practical thinking in a polarized debate.
I think there's one or two answers. I think they either compete against their biological sex, as many of them did before, or you create an entirely new category for a transgender athlete. And then they're able to compete fairly. But what you cannot do is continue to allow more and more trans athletes to start decimating women's records. In some cases,
Maher and Morgan's partnership in this discussion reflects a broader movement pushing back against extremes on both sides. Their dialogue showcases how logic, humor, and directness can pierce through emotional overreach. They remind audiences that advocating for fairness is not bigotry, it's balance. Their tone remains confident yet controlled, inviting reason over outrage. This section bridges the sports debate to a wider critique of ideological language and social media-driven outrage. Both commentators signal fatigue with moral posturing that ignores practical consequences. Their approach brings clarity to complex issues clouded by emotion. The synergy between Maher's wit and Morgan's blunt realism makes the discussion entertaining yet deeply rational. The underlying message is that society must rediscover moderation. This part expands the conversation from sports to the broader erosion of critical thinking. It's not just about athletes. It's about how we define truth.